So, welcome to Into the Mystic podcast. My name's Juliana Lavell, and I am super honored and excited today to have one of my teachers, Harshad Thomlinson, on as a guest today. And he runs a podcast called The Hero's Journey. And I would love it if you would just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Deep breath. Hi. Thank you, Juliana, for having me join you. I feel like this is a collaboration, right? So I got to hear your story, and it felt right when you asked me to share my story. And I'm all about the story now, in terms of how I feel like I could serve, Seva, serving the present moment, serving, creation unfolding. And I feel that while I have many skills, and a list of certifications and letters after my name, etc., I feel that some of my experience and my ability to maybe facilitate other people telling their stories and facilitating that is something I'm really keen on right now. Ergo, the Finding Joe Hero's Journey podcast that I started, I think I have 5 episodes in the can, as they say now, done, which have all been very interesting and very, the byproduct is here I am listening to these people tell their story, their hero's journey, and which I guess I'm going to share a little bit about one of mine tonight in kind of the overarching life story in a way. But yeah, it's such a heart experience, such a full visceral, heartfelt tears, laughter, whatever that happen when we get to hear someone's authentic story, right? So I'm all about that. And I've been doing that for some years. I've been a yoga teacher for, that's crazy to say, like 32 years, right? And practicing for longer, like 42 years. Eesh, that's scary. Not scary. It's just it's a big number, which is good, and I've had some credentials and many different career: air traffic controller and a Xerox salesman and a massage therapist and a caregiver for special needs, which I have gone back to recently since COVID happened, and kind of some work changed for me where I had been doing some work and creating some revenue, keeping the lights on. I needed to do that again, like many people. And I went back to serving special needs again, that I did many years ago. Actually, when I was in massage school 26, 7, 8 years ago, I paid for my school by working at a group home, which was one of my favorite jobs ever, as it is right now. It's not one I'll ever, break the bank, but it's very good. And yeah, I'm still doing teacher training. I'm still doing a couple things I'll mention at the end of this podcast where I get to say, hey, don't forget to follow me and stuff. But yeah, I'm back working with special needs, and I feel really awesome even serving the people that serve, the other people I work with.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine you'd be really good at that. And they need a lot of patience and that grounding energy. So, yeah, I wanted to just offer the viewers a little background as to how I met you as well. So back when I did my first teacher training through a different company, and I was kind of, early days in Kelowna where we live, there wasn't a lot of yoga studios. It was not as popular as it is now.
mhm.
And I think I started with Bikram, which was kind of like the polar opposite almost of walking through the doors of Trinity, the studio that you guys had. And so when I found Trinity through my mom, I just have to say that it felt like a safe place. When the other studios, although they did gift me with the practice and I did learn it was like an avenue into the practice, I'm very grateful for the level of compassion and safety and grounding that was really offered me an ability to, I believe, like calm my nervous system and get to that deeper level of healing that I was searching for in yoga. And this is why I feel like I wanted to hear your insight around your hero's journey because, as I've said before on your podcast, that, no one is exempt from the hero's journey. We're all like, even if you're Harshad and you have, all the tools in your tool belt and experience, you're still gonna have to slay a dragon, so to speak, at some point
Yeah.
at any age and stage. And I just find it very fascinating. I just think there's so many gold nuggets to be found um, when someone such as yourself goes through these experiences and what comes up for you around that. So I'd love to just take us right into um, so at the beginning. I mean, you've probably have many hero's journey throughout your life, but today we're going to kind of zero in on a health journey with your heart and
Right.
kind of what led up to that. And you can go
Right.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you acknowledging and honoring coming to the studio and the the resonance, if you will, of the safety and the spaciousness and just the permission to show up as you are. And it kind of, we entered that you entered those comments after I was talking about working at the group home and being with people that have some special needs and special challenges and can be very dynamic and autistic and reactive and even aggressive, and yet I don't get that really at all. And I think it's partly due to that, that same kind of, it's the same story. It's the same space that I feel comfortable in, that I feel like I did a good job when I ran studios and taught classes, etc. So um and that was earned, right? It's not like I didn't just, and I'm going to back up to my story now. And so I arrived at this with some practice, right? I think the Yoga Sutras talks about, long steady practice. You gotta hang in there. You gotta do the work, as they say. And so my story actually begins uh most dramatically when I was 11 and my dad died. And my dad was a dude. He was an Olympic athlete. He was a quarterback at Oregon State University football. He was a smart guy, and yet he was in World War II. And he saw some heavy stuff go down, and he started drinking, and kind of became a kind of whatever, like a closet drinker, whatever you call it. I didn't really even know. I mean, I know now. I knew looking back, but and it's crazy. My mom said, he would just, get up at 5, he takes 2 shots of vodka, gargle them, swallow them, and then go run 5 miles. And he was amazing. And yet it took his life, it eroded away his health. And at 48, he passed away. Unexpectedly, not unexpectedly. I mean, his body shut down certain systems. And so that was the beginning of really a long arc journey for me where this is the 70s. I didn't have any support. I didn't, we didn't talk about anxiety and depression then. I just kind of became a fog for me. It was like a year or so after that, I just started smoking weed, and it was the 70s, was great. I had fun. I survived. God, wow. I don't know how I got home a couple times. Um, then I joined the Navy, right? And I kind of just cut my hair, got rid of the Led Zeppelin hair. But that that challenge was still with me. I just didn't know what to do with it. So I became an overachiever then, and a straight, A guy. I went to university, got a degree in aviation. Was a athlete in the Navy, doing different stuff, and yeah. But I started doing yoga about that time. it was just I found from a book. It was like the grace of Babaji Swami Kripalu, delivered a book that I followed and started practicing on my own all those years ago. And by that time I'm a triathlete. I'm I'm kind of driven in that way, like my dad. I think I have a high pain tolerance, so I was able to push the body pretty hard over some years of work hard, play hard. And at the same time, when I was in my mid-20s, the depression, anxiety, I had to finally deal with it. And I teach this in schools too, about that's the moment when I really began to work with the breath and realize, yeah, I could do a handstand and I could run a marathon, but I still had anxiety, I still had tension. So, and that was with me for some years, right? I did some work, I did some personal, some counseling work too around my dad's death, and that was super helpful for me. But the residue, the residual effect of struggling and being anxious all those years kind of stayed with me. And
Sorry, can
yeah,
I interject for a moment?
yeah.
Do you believe in ancestral trauma, that maybe there was some piece of your dad's anxiety or trauma that he experienced that you were sort of subconsciously processing? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to think about that. I want to kind of lean back into that. And yeah, just definitely a little bit of juice comes with that. I try to stay focused on the life I'm living, but I'm also really aware of and open to, other levels of existence that are beyond my own or even beyond this incarnation, and the influences of other, even what is it, internal family systems, or different kind of counseling work, different things where we look at those entities, those pieces. So this is all to say, yeah, I I I'm going to actually sit with that a little bit and open and pray on that a little bit, and just open to that a little bit, because I'm doing some work right
Yeah,
now.
thank
So
you. I'm just curious
yeah,
about that, but you keep going on your story.
yeah. No, I'm kind of digging that. I want to kind of go meditate right now, right over there. Uh, so, um, so thank you for that. And I hope our listeners are appreciating that as well, because that's some great wisdom. And thank you for interjecting that. And yeah, I think the plot thickens when by my mid 30s or so, I started to, I had tamed the anxiety, I tamed the depression issues, did some great work on that, and I'm good at supporting that too. But um, kind of that, I think the tension, the internal tension in the body, and the drive that I still had was still there. So I think I was still able to push myself, physically really hard. So there's something about that. I guess it's just funny. I want to reflect on what you pointed out. Like there's something about that physicality and that drive. What was that about? I guess I'm still discovering that. But it was strong enough that when I was in the Navy, in the early 80s, I was an air traffic controller, but I swam in Dam Neck, Virginia. I used to swim at the Navy SEALs pool, and I got to know a bunch of them, and they were inviting me to re-enlist and become a SEAL. And they said, you can do this. Like we actually need, yeah. I don't know. I'm glad I didn't, in a way, but what it reminded me of is just that ability to push through. Now that I know this from other athletes, because this is where the story really becomes physical now, is that by the time I'm into my early 40s, that push of my body ended up creating atrial fibrillation. So, a very not uncommon um, form of a really rapid heartbeat. And it's funny, I was taking piano lessons when that first showed up. It would happen when I was practicing piano with Mark Kelso, bless your heart, Mark, wherever you are. And I was having those I call it skippies, skipping heartbeats. And he framed it. You might appreciate this, Juliana. He said, well, maybe your heart is trying to do more. It's just, it's, you know, it's really big and it wants to do more. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of down with that. I think I did that. I think I kept that going. And um the, you know, the skip thing did, you know, continue until it became every day. So by the time, um, you know, I'm going to say in 2016, it was happening every day. Now I could, and that's pretty dramatic. So if you hear of somebody that has AFib, you know, they have it occasionally and it freaks them out and they go to the doctor and they do a bunch of tests. And um, I was having it every day, and the cardiologist couldn't believe it. That, you know, like, well, you have this every day. I'm like, well, yeah, I just, you know, I breathe, I relax, and it does go back to normal. You know, so it's really rapid. It's fluttering. It's the top chambers of the heart are misfiring. It feels like a double beat. It feels like you're on the treadmill and you've gone too far. You know, you're in the red zone or whatever they call it. You know, it has that feeling, and you can't really get out of it. So, um, yeah, I was having it every day. So,
And sorry,
and it.
did you find,
Mhm.
said you found that when you relaxed and you did the breath work, it did improve or shifted or?
Yeah, well, what it did do, it would stop kind of on its own, kind of when there were some techniques like you bear down or you hold your breath or you splash some water in your face or some vagus nerve, vagal stimulation that you can try to do. But for me, it was about not throwing in an adrenaline on it. Like if I wasn't freaking out about it, because it feels, you know, it's kind of, it can be deadly, you know, in some cases, or you can have a stroke. That's the other bad one is you can get some plaque built up in the heart when it's skipping like that, and then it will send it out, and then you have like a in your lungs or your brain, and that's not good, obviously. Um, so you know, I I was managing fairly well, but um, in terms of, you know, like not making a dramatic thing. But I knew at some point it, you know, I tried nutrition things. I tried, you know, you probably can relate to this. Like I went across the whole gamut of like from acupuncture to energy work to, you know, a healer to, you know, you know, personal development stuff of like kind of like the piano guy said, oh, it's your heart, and you know what are you expressing from Ajna or from Anahat chakra, you know, like what's going on there. And it still kept happening. So that was a bit of, you know, I can see in the hero's journey, this now I'm at the challenge. I'm at the really tough point where I kind of have to make a decision. I'm up against, you know, a kind of denial or a, you know, it'll be okay, or it's going to go away, or you're not doing enough, you're not doing something right, you're still eating potato chips, or, you know, something that I do like potato chips. Um, you know, that was something I was doing, and that wasn't it. And by this time we'd moved to Florida, and I was um, you know, living in an ashram and, you know, pretty deep into the practices, and you know, reigniting rather some of the practices I would say that I've known for many years, and spending time with Yogi Desai and Mickey Singer and the beach, you know, the ocean, which I'm definitely an ocean guy. I'm a Cancer, right? I want to be in the water. I want to be a crab.
Doing all the right things, like
Exactly. All the right things. Well, that's, remember, that was part of your podcast journey, right? You shared too. I did all the right things, had the right energy, and it was still happening. And one time it kept going for 30 hours. And I had to go to the hospital, and it was like, oh, they were going to do that thing where they put the paddles on you and they basically stop and start your heart. And that was not very fun. I know my lovely wife Sonia was there, and I could tell she knew I was upset. I'm pretty chill usually, but I'm like, uh, I wasn't really thrilled about doing that. Now, thankfully, right at like they're signing me up and getting ready to take me up to that floor to do the whole paddle thing. and it went back to normal rhythm right there. And so it went back, but it was enough of a, that was in the hero's journey. That was the dragon time right there. It was kind of like, I'm not praying. Well, I kind of was. I'm like, if I can get through this and not have to do the paddle thing, I'm going to, I want to do something about this. I can't keep living with this. So I did. And so I went to see the cardiologist, and I had Obamacare. Yay, Morocco. When I was living in the States. And so I was covered to do this. It's a pretty major, it's not a surgery, it's a procedure, right? Where they took me in. And it happened. That's the thing. Like in the States, like I decided I wanted to do it, and it was like 4 weeks later.
Wow.
Right. That's very different than here, where I would have had to wait a long time. I know. But that was a pretty big night or that night going in to have the procedure, and then even the night before with my daughters, and it just, again, relate to having conversations with my daughters, because there was a risk. I remember signing the form saying, there is a something percent chance that you could go into cardiac arrest, or you could die on the table. Do you need to sign here? And I'm like, okay. So I went through with it. It was actually quite fascinating how they run a line up through the vein in my leg, and then run it all the way up and go into the heart, while they're looking at uh, not an X-ray, but a whatever, an image that they're getting. It's kind of an MRI in a way. No, it's not an MRI, but in any event, they're in there. They got a little tiny catheter thing.
Like a laparoscopic type of.
Yeah, that kind of a thing, right? And then they burn just a few heart cells that that are causing that there's like a path that shouldn't be there, but a little electrical path that's going. So yeah, and I remember then I got out of the surgery, I came out of the anesthesia, and I'm there that night, and it's still happening a little bit. It's that's how it goes. Is like after because they make it happen in the surgery so they can see exactly where it is, and then after the surgery it's still happening a little bit, but it's going to settle down. So that was an interesting kind of as the end of the journey came around. um it's still happening a little bit, but it's kind of like, okay, but it's going to be okay now. It actually, the doctor was good. Dr. Acevedo said it was really successful, and it has been. So that's been what, for almost 5 years. So I still have it once in a great while, a little episode of it, but not anywhere like I did before. And now sorry, it's like I kind of know, I've learned, my magnesium's a little off, or I had a gin and tonic or something, and some things just don't, the combination of some things might sometimes just make it irritated. And even alignment, like I've got to do my practice, I've got to get my thoracic spine open in a certain way, my neck. So so the journey back from that has been quite fascinating, because I've I've met some people that have been through that, or that are having it. I just met one the other day, a gentleman that I may interview for my podcast, and we were talking about this, and he hasn't had the ablation, that's called the procedure, done. And so that's the gift of going through a challenge like that, because he's afraid too. But I think, well, I can't, I don't want to speak for him. I'm sensing that, and I know that's often the case of, is it harder to live in this state of dis-ease and potential drama, tragedy stuff happening, or to sign up to go in and have a thing done, have an invasion done? Because I'm not really thrilled to go to the doctor much. As I gotten older, I've had a couple things, but I'm pretty healthy, right? So it's kind of like I don't take any medications. I haven't had to do that. I don't know. So So, but to meet someone that's struggling with this, I kind of say, you know what? I know where you're at, and yet I really think this can be a good choice. Yeah.
Mhm. I'd love to just back up a little to that moment of, right, kind of when you're in that moment of deciding whether you want the procedure or the paddles, and there's some consideration of your own mortality. Like in that very moment, if you can recall, did you have any interesting kind of downloads or visions or dreams? Like, I know for me, during my hospital stay, when I was like kind of on that life or death edge, it felt like I was like, um, you know, receiving a lot of interesting thoughts or impressions. I'm just curious if there was anything that popped up for you that stands out in that moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say even historically, when I've been in AFib, it's pretty dramatic. And I remember I used to do Japa. I used to have my mala, and I this happened to me one time when I was out on the Washington coast on a hike on a beautiful beach, uh, way out and away from everything. And it happened, and I I kind of went into meditation and japa and just kind of and you know surrendered. So for me that was the same. That I guess there's a moments of surrender when I was having it every day. It was kind of like, oh, first the charge of like something uncomfortable, and then the surrender into breath and settling down. But the day that I went into the 30-hour episode, that was more, I can't say there was an epiphany in terms of a vision or a something in that way, except there was some moments of prayer and reverence and surrendering into, okay, I'm not going to make this decision with my mind. I'm going to open into, and please, all beings on all levels, give me a hand here, because I'm struggling with this. And um I'm it makes sense that I'm afraid. And there's all the things that with the psychology of that are the guilt of like being an athlete and trying really hard for so many years. That's how one of the reasons this happens, and it happens with athletes, is they overdo it and they push their heart too hard. So that would have been me.
Yeah, I have this like vision of like an elastic that gets stretched too far, and then when it rebounds, it has those stress marks in it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's a great analogy for sure. And I think if anything, the you know the mystical piece that showed itself was in the healing, in the period afterwards, where it was kind of like the affirmation, where I had some pretty profound conversations with my kids, who at the time would have been like 10 and 14, and having the conversations about attachment and this lifetime, and the gift we were having at that time of being with Yogi Desai, who is an amazing being in his own right, Mickey Singer, who I have the greatest reverence and respect for, and spending time with them and being in that field of energy that um, this is to say, the save, I kind of said that before, the pay it forward in terms of, okay, well, I have this day, like I'm alive. I get to go again. So what am I going to do with this? Am I going to try to get a big SUV and have a pool in the backyard and, bigger, better, faster, more? Or am I going to what? Hmm. So that was a key moment for me that um, I have maintained. I think I set an example as best I can, you know, for them, especially in a world that seems pretty challenging to them. but I think there's a level of acceptance for them too, to say, okay, well, this is what I have. What am I, what do I do with today? So that was kind of the, and yeah, and the, the after effect of that event. Some awesome things happened too, just, some synchronistic things where, I got some time with Mickey, and I started doing massage with Yogi Desai, and some things happened that were, gifts back to me, that came back to me. So yeah, pretty powerful time.
May I ask, just for people that don't know, japa is the repetition of a mantra, what or a prayer. Um, can I ask you what your like go-to prayer is?
Yeah, it's Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So that's Sanskrit, and that means thy will be done, not mine. That means I surrender. That means, God, you're driving the car. And it's the only one I can do. I've said that phrase. I was telling someone the other day about 1.4 million times. If I did the math right, of all the years I've done that, that's a lot. And so it's funny, my wife was following another gentleman that is a great, Thomas Ashley Farron, great teacher, and he had some great Sanskrit mantras, and to affect change or to bring about certain things. And I would try them. It's 108 beads in the round, right? And I would try them. I'd start off with a new mantra, and I would, by the time I got to the 108, I'd be back to Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's just so funny. It's like I can't get off that track, so I guess I'm keeping it.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's cool. I think that's a cool teaching as well as like allowing yourself to trust the resonance of a mantra if it's sort of if it's for you, that you don't have to, like, I know in our trainings I always say, if this mantra doesn't resonate, just stop. Don't, like,
right.
um so I really appreciate that, and that's, I love that mantra. The meaning is really that there is this higher creative force, God, or whatever the universe you want to call it, um, that there are stories that are kind of waiting to be born through us. Um, and a lot of our suffering, I know I could just speak for myself, is this idea that we can control the situation somehow. And yeah, we all know how that turns out.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful to have this sharing with you, because I feel like you told your story on the interview with me, and I'm telling my story, and they're just, the beauty of that is they're the same story. I mean, it's a different version of what we go through in that authenticity, and it's not perfect. And I think as you shared your story there, you had your imperfections and doubts and, you know, upsets, and I sure as heck did, and judging myself that I something or other, you know, but I think all the time that creative mystery was trying to be birthed, right? It's like the right action is waiting to be birthed here, Harshad. Just get out of the way. But it's hard sometimes. It's hard, especially with a a physical, visceral thing, and when we're kind of bought into the medical system so much that we have to turn ourselves over to them, and that was a thing I had to do too. It's like I had to like and love this doctor. Like I told him who I am, you know, and I said, look, do your best, like hold me dear, because I have more stuff to do, and I take this really seriously. Like I want you to kind of get ready for it. It's not just another tick box of your 9:30 appointment.
Yeah, like go do some pranayama
Yeah,
before.
pretty much. Yeah, I kind of did. Right.
Um, I just have a couple of notes that I want to check in on. So there's so many nuggets coming through already with, I think um one of the tools just being like finding that mustard seed of faith, if you will, to carry you through, and that focus, having being in a chaotic moment and just like coming back to a simple thought or a prayer, and just breathing with the repetition of that, um, as a really simplified something that people could turn to in a moment of crisis. But I'm curious if there were any other tools that were born after, like, kind of coming into your return and resolution. Like, was there any new things that you started doing, or activities, or practices that you found were nourishing, that maybe were new from before, or that you
Yeah.
came back to?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I think kind of harkens back to your question about my dad. Was there something, you know, generational, energetic, something transferred? And even though I didn't know him um, very well, being, he died when I was 11. Um, that drive, that something special that, I mean, you probably know some athletes or people that are like that, that have something very special where they that's just who they are. I had to look at that after the surgery because I, I just didn't, I wanted to find that was the wisdom of like, okay, where is that place? Where is the place where I can feel I'm going beyond what is, I'm going to say in yoga terms, like energetically, how does this feel? Because it's such a physical thing to push the body that hard that, chemicals take over and you just kind of do it. And especially, yeah, I was able to do that. But now it's been really neat to get, I'm older, right? And so I'm watching that to go like, okay, this feels good. Like and I'm not trying to prove myself to anybody either. And that really wasn't my gig before. It wasn't an ego because I'm not that great of an athlete. I was just consistent. But yeah, I've learned that what's the edge, right? What's the physical edge? And I've even seen that in like pranayama, yogic breathing, or, it's some posture I do right over there or whatever. Like when I'm at the edge, exploring the edge is different for me now. It's different. It's a little less will and a little more, just self love, self care, just acceptance. Yeah.
Um, what are some of the little things that bring you joy and peace in your, like, daily life?
Hmm. Well, I like that question too. Playing with our dog. We have a new dog. Well, not new. He's a couple years old. So, I'm in love with our dog for sure. And yeah, something special about animals that yeah, I could go on about that, but that's one for sure. And playing with him and taking him for walks and snuggling with him, and yeah, music is another one. I was listening to on my bike ride home today. Listening to some music, some Philip Glass opera stuff that I like him. So I have a very eclectic music taste, and that's definitely a surrender. I, I don't listen to the radio. I kind of listen to what kind of comes to me, like, oh, this is what I want to do. And silence is a lot of silence is good to listen to as well. I like that as well. Uh, yeah, and I think I love my daughters a lot. I love my wife for sure, and I love my daughters. So just that collaborative love fest that shows up in a mundane thing or a goofy thing. I've got a kind of a sense of humor, as you know, and so them showing that now or showing me something funny sharing that time with them, or, both very bright, and hearing their perspectives on the world or their life or the thing they're studying. Yeah, I really enjoy that. I mean, I enjoy every day. I really do. I kind of wake up. I don't like, hey, I get up. I'm like, I like coffee. I get up and have a coffee. I mean, I'm not that. I'm just saying, like, okay, well, it's kind of like, what's going on what's gonna go on today, you know?
Yeah.
Uh yeah. And it never fails. Like, it's there's always something, some adventure shows up. I'm not a golfer, but I always said that, like, if I'm a golfer, I equate it to golfing. Like, I hit the ball off the tee straight down 200 and something yards, and then the next shot goes off into the woods. And then the next one is, like, I don't hit all perfect shots in my day. But I kind of dig that now. It's like, okay, well, I wonder where this ball's gonna go. So,
Absolutely. Just
yeah.
enjoying life instead of
Yeah.
racing with it.
Yeah.
Do you have any like books or teachers that are like if you could just like let's say you were just going through a hard time and you could only take like two books with you, what like without thinking too much, what would you just grab off the shelf?
Um, yeah, one would be The Untethered Soul for sure. And wow, what's coming right now is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. Ken was an amazing writer, and there's so much in there. Ah, I want to read that book again right now when I said that.
Cool.
Um, yeah,
Okay, I have one last question.
sure. I like your question.
Um, we started out, I find it interesting that we kind of started around the time of your father's passing in the story. Um, and I feel like if there was something that your father would want to like share with you right now, like let's say he's up there just saying, Jeff, I want to like give you a little advice for the last, you know, this new beginning slash chapter of this earth's plane. What do you think he might want to say to you? Or what does your heart
Yeah,
say?
that's what I'm yeah, I what's coming is like, keep exploring, keep trying new things, keep learning. Yeah, keep experiencing, I guess, is what's kind of coming around. Yeah, that was pretty clear that came, right?
Cool. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to your story?
Just that I like how you do your podcast. You're really, really good at this. So yeah, I'm learning. Uh, no, it's just a pleasure to be with you. And I just, yeah, I'm trusting that too, that the continued, you know, the connections, the passing in the night that we have in terms of, we cross paths and whatever. I trust that that's something comes from that. Like, somebody's going to listen to this, or somebody, I don't know. I appreciate that we stay in touch and we cross paths, and we obviously think highly of each other, which is, maybe that's a gift too, just a gift that we pay forward to others, is just know that we're all in these journeys. We can love each other and support each other on our journeys. And I feel like it's just so great to be able to do that with you again today, right now.
Well, thank you very much. I acknowledge that and I appreciate that. And yeah, I hope to join in on a satsang or something at some point.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Good.
yeah, well, on that note, I'd love to know what's coming up for you.
Yeah.
How can people work with you or find you?
Yeah. You can go to mindfulrest.ca, mindful restoration, mindfulrest.ca is our website. Um, I've been doing Take a Breath in Schools for many years, a nonprofit that started in the States. It's now going to transition onto the Take a Breath, onto the Mindful Restoration website, which is great. You know, some content. I'm doing that right now. My daughter's going to help me with that actually. I'm doing a couple trainings coming up, just little um, weekend. I'm going to do a free back training, which is the back wellness program that I created some years ago. Um, just around neutral alignment and core and hips and shoulders, and just some good structural stuff that I needed because I had some hip issues. Still do, but you know, that's something I really appreciate. And then I'm doing a training in August, or Take a Breath presenters. So that would be a training to help people learn how to um, present a Take a Breath experience, like a hero's journey, to go in front of a classroom or a workplace or a group of people or family or whatever, and create an experience that kind of takes somebody using some yoga nidra and some tools through some of these practices, uh, you know, kind of things that we're talking about today in this interview are kind of represented there. How are you ready for that? So I think that'll be an awesome weekend. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah. And
Awesome.
I to your point, like I do want to get out, and like many people, it's been a couple weird years. So I want to be in the public again and do some stuff. I just haven't, I checked into a couple places. I haven't really found a place that, the place that wants me. No, a place that, you know, I'm not hearing anything back yet. So, but I'll keep trying. I'm not going to force it, but um, yeah. So that time will come and we can do some chanting and hang out and meditate and talk, you know, share together. Maybe we do that together at some point. I'm down with that.
That would be fun. I would love that.
Okay.
Mm. Yes, I will put your website in the show notes.
Okay.
And yeah, on that note, I just want to say, um, yeah, I bow to your light and just really appreciate you sharing the story today. And feel free to connect with Harshad through his website. I'll leave his email on there as well.
Yeah.
And he has a really great podcast. And what's that called?
It's called Finding Joe, the Hero's Journey.
Perfect.
Finding Joe, the Hero's Journey. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Signing off for today.
Okay.
If you like this episode, feel free to like and subscribe to hang out some more.
Nice.
Till next
Thank you.
time.
Blessings.